All right, Cyber Traders, welcome on back here this Thursday, September 23rd, shortly after 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And at this time, as always, welcome on back here for our afternoon meeting. Great to see all of our students and trial members alike here. I see Leda, I saw Nick and Kathleen just before who called out ZY. Great to see Deborah, Jean, and all of our students and members, like I said just before. And if you're joining us on social media today, Facebook Live and YouTube, welcome on back. So we've had ourselves a day here today, folks, a nice little Thursday. So what I mean by that is, well, we ended up actually coming off the Fed meeting pretty nicely. Markets ended up pushing up pretty early on this morning and still kind of hanging around the highs right now. You could see the SPY ticker right there on my 5-minute chart. But it was more so really the stocks that were on the CTU morning watch list and even those that were on our side list. We killed it today. So let's go over a couple of those that we did really well on. And as we go through, we'll eventually put a couple of them on our watch list here. The RNAZ stock right away is one that we will put on our list. This stock seems to be pushing back up from the 450 level pretty nicely for the meantime here. You know what? I'll tell you, going into the market open, it seemed a little choppy in pre-market. It was throwing me for a loop. I told myself, I was like, you know what, I'd rather follow some stocks I'm more familiar with, stocks that I've done, well on, as far as the last couple of days or this past week. But man, once this ended up popping up like really over 350 shortly after the market opened, it took off, ended up running up without me at first, but I was able to jump in a bit later on, grabbing about 35 or 40 cents somewhere around there, but ended up just continuing to push up over time all throughout the morning into the afternoon, ended up topping off right around 528, 530. But for right now, I mean, hey, maybe this could be the beginnings of another move up. It hasn't, completely dumped off just yet. So maybe I will put this on our list to begin. If we build up our list pretty nicely, then maybe I'll give this a boot. Or if this ends up dumping off and, just making an ugly shakedown, breaking below support one more time, then at that point, then I'd write it off. But for right now, it's hard to not put this on our list to begin. Really good liquidity on the order book, very tight spread consistently throughout the day. Right now, you have a 26,000 share order on the ESC sitting there at $4.80. From there, we would assume 5. After that, the next level ahead. So, keep this one in mind so far, the RNAZ stock. It's been a long day of talking, long week, really. We've had class just finishing up yesterday, the phase 1 stock course. So just took a little sip of water there. But, aside from the RNAZ stock and still pushing up right now, I told us live inside the trading room, I was looking for the short on this trade actually just right off of 27. I didn't take it. It ended up just, nipping right under 27 just now and then popping right back up. You could see my order pending though. So I set up the order to try and short it right away afterwards, looking for the rebreak. Obviously, it ended up pushing up. But man, this stock, we did really well on upon the market open today. A stock that we ended up doing pretty well on back on Tuesday of this week. So, just to recap, this stock Tuesday of this past week, I'll be honest, I forgot the news, but it's to say that, more or less, this stock ended up showing, I think it was like 900 or 920,000 shares at the market open, right off of the price $24.12. That was the opening bell print. So that's the price level we were harping on all throughout that day. And with that in mind, that created a huge level. So, once it broke over 24.12 after the market open, I mean, that was it. This is the one trade I'm still kicking myself for, and it sounds so greedy to say, given I did pretty well on the stock afterwards, running it up from 25, then through 26. I ended up shorting it right around 26.75 at first. Took a loss at first there, but then got it on the way down. I know the stock pretty nicely, so it's to say that it sounds greedy, but I ended up missing this pop that I was discussing here just before. I was watching a couple of the other trades that we were watching, the RNAZ stock at first, like I said, that threw me off, and the CEI. But, man, once this popped up, I missed it. I was really pissed. I was pretty frustrated because once it broke over that big level, right? Like we talk about this all the time in class. We talked about it just yesterday and this week. It was 900,000+ share print at the opening, on this QS trade. So regardless of the price, 900,000 shares is enormous for any stock. It's like asking, what happens when there's a 900,000 share iceberg order on level 3? It's to say you have to respect it. So once it popped it, you knew what was going to happen afterwards. And I turned over to it maybe like 30 seconds, 40 seconds too late. And from that point, it was gone and running without me. So, nonetheless, right now, this stock, I ended up just pulling my order to try and short it. It's actually coming back down right now. As I go through this meeting, I'll let you folks know if I end up actually jumping in on the short right away. But yeah, QS for right now, we'll keep the stock on our watch list for the meantime. All right, so the QS trade, we had the RNAZ stock. Not everything was pretty. This is one at least I'll jump to right away, and it's still on the top of the gainers list, really. But the MRM stock ended up making a big pop early on. It popped as soon as the market opened up, even got halted. But, pretty similar to the RNAZ stock. We weren't really that familiar with the RNAZ stock up until today. We were more familiar with QuantumScape just, here in this trading room over the last many months and year. But MRM, we're not really that familiar with. So it's to say for a stock that's up as much as this was, you're expecting profit taking. You're expecting a pullback. But hey, it popped right out the gate. So it's to say if it's not going to drop right out the gate, if it pops, I guarantee you, I don't really toss the G word around too often, the word guarantee. I guarantee you, if this pops right out the gate, given how much it was already up early in the morning, it's going to pull back. It's going to begin to drop off. That doesn't always mean it's going to provide an entry for you as well, because as you could see, the stock ended up just continuing to break down over time, broke down below 15, broke down below 14. And once it broke below 14, that was it. Like, at 11:15, 11:30 Eastern time there, complete pop and drop move, unfortunately. So, this one I just wanted to bring up pretty briefly here, at least the MRM trade. Also, actually, one more as I'm looking at my notepad, but the Neuro trade. This one also is more of a bust, throughout the day. It ended up providing a nice bounce at first, right from $13.80 to $14. That was a level we had marked out early in the pre-market, but unfortunately, it ended up failing to break higher. So it ended up topping off right under 15. I don't even think it had kissed the level there, as it headed up towards there at 10:30 Eastern time, ended up snapping back down. And as much as you would want to hope for this stock to, pop and run up like the ATER trade yesterday, again, you can't let your hopes or assumptions get ahead of you, because this ended up snapping back down. I lost some profit on this trade. I was in from 14. I was killing it on this trade. I took half off the table, but then I expected a lot more to come out of it. So then I ended up holding on too long on the second half, and I only ended up getting 10 cents on the second half of my trade there. So better 10 cents than no cents, and better no cents than where it's at now. But it's to say, unfortunately, the stock didn't really perform as well as we'd wanted it to as well. All right, so water break number 2, and one more. All right, so the F-Cell stock, then we'll just go from top to bottom. Actually, my top percent gainers list, for some reason, it's not showing a few stocks there. So we'll kind of use the custom built scan in a moment. But the F-Cell stock, this is one that we also did pretty well on, at least heading into the late morning, early afternoon. Ended up bouncing up pretty nicely, from 660, 665. Ended up breaking high at the day in the opening bell print right off of 680. And then from there, pretty much moved up well. There was a rumor that came out. Rich commented this to me as I came back to my home office earlier this afternoon. Let me just take a quick look. I got to double check. Oh, you know what? It's actually on my other computer here. Damn, not as prepared. I think it's to say that not prepared for this. My apologies, folks. So it looks like the CEO was on CNBC saying they were partnering with Toyota. Pretty interesting. So, we'll see what comes of that, at least. The F-Cell stock, it ended up popping shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern time and still at the highs. So for right now, like with the QS trade and the RNAZ for the meantime on that, we'll add F-Cell to our afternoon watch list. Give me a quick second here, folks. I'm hearing myself talk. Just this afternoon meeting. All right, so let's rip it from top to bottom. We don't really have class this afternoon. Today is Thursday. We'll talk about Bitcoin and crypto at least tomorrow. There is a little tidbit that I'd like to mention briefly on that. News coming out on Twitter, with Twitter accepting Bitcoin for payment as use of tipping for influencers, or I guess just payments from client to client anyway. But that's pretty interesting. So we'll talk more about that at least come tomorrow. Let me just run this custom built scan that we have here across the gainers list, because the RNAZ wasn't showing up there. The MRM trade's not showing up there on the hot list. All right, so those we already talked about at least. So we'll go to CEI number 4. Wow, this one's making a hell of a move right now. I was going to say pop, a hell of a move. This stock ended up making a nice pop for us heading into the early afternoon off of 170. I'll tell you, the stock's been a huge tease really the last 2 weeks. So about time, honestly. You can take a look at the daily chart really over the last week or so, lower highs, pulling back. We were hopeful a couple of days prior to last week for it to make a nice run. It didn't. So, yeah, right now, this stock's in great position to make a move up to 2. Jose S, one of our trial members inside Cyber Group, says about time is right. Yeah, you're telling me. It's the type of stock that you could trade 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 shares if you know what you're doing. I don't want new students to be trading way more shares than they really should. You know, again, if you get in at the right place at the wrong time and you don't know how to manage the trade, or if you forget to set a stop, then you're more often than not going to let emotion, take control. And maybe I'll hold on to this. Oh, it's going to bounce back up. I'm sure of it. I hope. And it doesn't. So that's what I mean where I say just be careful. Don't try and trade more shares unless if you're like a very skilled, consistently profitable day trader already, or at least if this CEI stock you've done well on in particular over the last few weeks or so. If you've done well on the stock over the last few weeks, then I'd say give it a shot on more shares perhaps. But yeah, on the way up to 2, you got like a 101,000 share order on the ask sitting there, and then even above that, you got 140,000 shares showing at $2.08. So that could be a backup resistance level to this trade heading into the afternoon there. All right, cool. CEI looks good. Wow, I don't know what's going on here. AMHC ended up making a nice spike up right now, but we know what happens to a stock like this typically. If it ends up completely running up, which I wouldn't expect it to, then I guess we'll try and follow it from there. But the stock has a really thin order book right now, thin volume on the bid and the ask. You can't even see the spread right now. It's like moving up that fast. But it's to say for a stock that popped already, dumped all the way back down, you're going to get a little second, win type of move here. I guess it even got halted and then reopened up just over the last few minutes. It got halted at 236, reopened up at 241. RWLK ended up making a nice move back up. Unfortunately, failed to test or break above the high that we had back from Tuesday. But man, this ended up doing us pretty nicely earlier today as well. Ended up running up nicely from 180, essentially where it broke out from after the market opened up. Ran up towards like 212, 210 there, and then broke higher, of course. But yeah, man, nice trade on the RWLK. Definitely a great stock to keep in mind now, at least going forward tomorrow, and then really more so, I'd say, like next week. I mean, hey, if this makes a faster pop and even bigger run up tomorrow, I'll take it. But definitely, I'm just saying, going forward in terms of the short term, the next week or so, keep this stock in mind. It's like a nice level 1 or 2 trade. Real quick, folks, the FCell stock, we already have it on the watch list so far. That's making new high of the day right now. ENSC, unfortunately, pulling back pretty sharply. It looks like it had a nice pop. I was in commute there at the time, but ended up popping up pretty nicely from 4 upwards towards 450. Easily broke the high of the day at that time, but ran up pretty nicely from there. Yeah, I guess you could say the same with this, as I said just before on the RWLK. I guess keep it in mind on your side list going forward tomorrow morning, perhaps. GSM, not a whole lot happening there. Tell you what, I'm going to set up an order to try and short that QS right now as we speak, just on a separate monitor. I'm going to do that right now, and if it drops below that level, I'll probably get filled. PAVM, not a whole lot happening right now. The stock ended up making a beautiful slingshot after the market opened up. You could see, I mean, briefly, or kind of zoomed out, you can see it dropped off, then made the slingshot right away after. It's QS. On the way down at 27. The GOEV trade, unfortunately, pulling back now. I know Fausto called that one out from earlier this morning. At this point, we'll kind of just skim through. REKR, just trading very low volume per minute right now. It looks interesting in terms of the trend, the chart. In fact, it's shortable, so if it fails to pop higher and pulls back, craps out, perhaps like the QS trade may do, that could be an interesting thought, but trading too little volume right now. Let's jump ahead here. BlackBerry perhaps coming off earnings. Too flat. All right, folks, I'll tell you what, I'll just jump ahead and ask this now. If there's anything that you would want me to check out, anything that's up big that I didn't really check out just yet myself, then type it in the chat board. Life, maybe. LIFE, familiar name. It's actually creeping up towards the highs that we had back from 2 weeks ago here. Looks like a huge spike. I mean, probably a huge market print ended up getting filled. 2:11 Eastern. I don't know if I can go back that far on the tape. Here's what I can do. This will be easier. Well, I think I know where the smart money's trading. Right off 12:30, whatever happened there, we ended up seeing a big print on the tape, probably off the bid, but once it pulled back up and over that price, obviously here's the move now. So yeah, Life, familiar name, it's at the highs. After that big print came in, it made a nice move, so hopefully a lot more left to it. Uh-oh, RNAZ popping. Oh, perfect. All right, so I didn't have that up on my other screen. I had the FCell stock and the QS. Yep, nice call from Cyber Group, from Patrick and Larry and Christopher. Oh yeah, beautiful. All right, folks, let me jump to the losers list here. I'll kind of expedite the process and see if there's anything else. The ear trade was hard to borrow to begin. Ended up getting smoked as soon as the market opened up. Ended up making for a nice little bounce, though. Like right after 10 o'clock, myself and Fausto were on that pretty early from like 6:35, 6:40-ish. Ended up bouncing up pretty well. For right now, though, I just think it's exhausted, and I don't know if this is a pharma stock. Pardon my ignorance there. I forgot what the news was on this trade, but whatever news came out, it doesn't look like the stock's going to make a big comeback anytime soon, right? That's where Fausto says they never come back. So at least once the news comes out, we hope for some sort of dead cat bounce initially, but it's a very short-term bounce, and then it drops back down. Here, this thing just got crushed, bounced up briefly. Right now it's on the way up to 7, so we'll keep it on our side list for right now. We're not going to put this on the main list just yet. If this does end up popping 7, then maybe we'll call it out from there. If it pops 7 before we finish up this meeting, then maybe we'll put it on the main list. CLU, ATER. So I'll tell you what, sometimes teaching class costs me, because the stock ATER ended up making a sneak move as we were finishing up the phase 1 stock course yesterday, shortly after 3 p.m. Eastern. This ended up breaking above the opening bell print price right off of 14.58, and then ended up taking off from there. Right now, though, there's a much better short here heading into the afternoon. Afternoon. My tongue is tied right now. All right, so let's see what else we got here, folks. Not much else. I mean, market's up, albeit maybe pulling back briefly off the highs. I could see the SPY there. That's all I see on the losers list, folks. If there's anything else that you would want me to check out, up, down, left, right, more than 5%, then like I just said previously, type it in the chat board right now. And QS held perfectly over 27. I didn't get filled. My order's still out there, though. Did the ear trade pop over 7, Ron, just as I finished up? Maybe I will slip it on our list here at the end. I mean, we only have like 5 stocks so far, so it's not like we're at like an overdose. GSM, nothing happening there. Life's already on our list, Frank. Life looks pretty good now. Much better now with the new pop, but yeah. Exit 22, good side list stock. Otherwise, I'd pass. I mean, if you do well on the stock day to day or week to week more so, then perhaps you'd have more of an interest in it. But yeah, CEI already on our list, Donnie. Great call, at least there. Testing too. I'll tell you what, I think that we're good, folks. I guess at the end, I will put the ear stock on in hopes of it popping 7 and making a dollar run up to 8, perhaps. So I'll slip it on here at the back end, but. Otherwise, I like the RNAZ stock obviously a lot more. Life popping, CEI popping, FCell popping, QS. My order's still out there, but I like those even more than QS here in the meantime. So, hey, if I get filled on the short, hopefully it leads to a nice snap down into the afternoon on QS. But otherwise, if it holds 27, that might make a new run for us heading into the close. So, definitely a lot of opportunity to work with here with just about 70 minutes left. All right, folks. So for all of us on social media, Facebook Live, YouTube, once again, as always, I appreciate you sticking with me each and every day and each and every afternoon. Before my tongue gets tied any further, I'm going to jump off the mic right now. I'll talk to all of us live inside the trading room coming up pretty shortly. I'll be back on myself at least at 3:30. Rich will be on coming up at 3 o'clock. Take care.